Hello, guys. Welcome back to SSRG and Your View. Today, we are going to be discussing on a concept that is both celebrated and controversial, which is Afropolitanism. So, as Africans, we have this rich history of, mobility, travel. So we've always been known for movement. We've never been in one place. And so we have this term that was coined by Taye Selassie, which kind of describes the African of the world. Basically, an African that can feel at home anywhere. So you are not, placed in a box and you are not defined by, geographical border. So you could, feel at home from Lagos to London or from Nairobi to Yavle or wherever it is. So we are going to explore this today, and we have to ask that is this identity a liberating tool for global Africans, or is it just a polished version of ourselves that is designed to seem palatable to the West? So I would like us to dive into this, and I know like Prince really has a lot to say, so we can start with you.
How do you know I have a lot to say? I do not have much to say in this. But to be honest, I have been thinking about this for a long while now, and I do not have a full stand on each aspect, any aspect of it. But I just wanted to start by, clarifying the two parts of the argument when it comes to Afro nationalism.
Yes.
Afropolitanism, not
Tanism.
nationalism,
Yes.
politanism. Because I think when people say Afropolitanism, it sounds like it's a political identity for Africans, but that's usually
Yes.
not what it is. It's this argument that as an African, who have been colonized and experience imperialism and who migrate and lives in different parts of the world, we have that capacity to adjust and adapt to wherever we find ourselves. And a lot of people who align with this viewpoint do not want to, align with the victimization of Africans. So, because a lot of the time when we discuss African identity or African reality, we talk about colonization, we talk about enslavement of black people. So many of them
Yes.
are arguing that this should not be the whole of our identity that defines us. Rather, we should also be talking about, what makes us unique in the global stage. Whereas a lot of critics, highlight that this is an elitist and middle class argument or mentality, because you have
Yes.
to have certain privilege for you to even leave your country in Africa to go somewhere else and then start experiencing the ability to live there or not to live there. So, and also a lot of other critics have also argued that, you know, that af- this idea is something that is as if we are trying to become the model minority, which have been used to describe mostly people from Asia, because black people and Africans would resist when they think things are not going well, typically. So, but for like, especially in the US, the model minority have been like Indians and Chinese and other Asians who, would go to school, do well in school, be CEO of Google and Microsoft and this stuff like that. So it's as if we are trying to make us ourselves more palatable to the West, which goes contrary to our own identity and who we are. So I think those are the two main parts of the argument. And I'm going to stop here and let others, share their viewpoints before I say any other thing.
Exactly. So I think I'll just continue from there, Prince, because the last part you talked about is very interesting to me. That somehow it seems we are trying to make ourselves more palatable to the global
Mm-hmm.
north, which is very problematic because when we talk about this Afropolitanism, it touches so much on our identity as Africans. So the argument about this whole thing is that that just being an African, that our definition as Africans should not be limited to that geographical space. That we are also able to move to other parts of the world, accept the culture, learn new things, be more diverse than we are. But honestly, each time I think about that in that direction, I always think about it like, why do we even try to associate our identity as Africans with our ability to interact with the broader society? We are true Africans because this Afropolitanism is very related to the concept of cosmopolitanism. That is when we begin to talk about,
Combination of African and
yeah.
cosmopolitanism, yes.
So that's when we talk about people being citizens of the world, right? And being
To be honest,
citizens,
I don't have a problem with us knowing how to associate or interact with the world, but losing our identity in that process. Like, it's just like the principle of assimilation. If a lot of discourse about immigration now is, oh, immigrants move to this place and they do not assimilate. When
yeah.
most of the time when people say assimilation, especially white people say assimilation, what they mean is you becoming white culturally and losing who you are. Sorry, I just
Yeah,
wanted to
exactly,
chip that
exactly.
in.
I understand. But the reason I touched on that is that when you pay closer attention to arguments surrounding this Afropolitanism, the definition, the arguments around it have a lot to do with identity. This is my concern because whether Africa or not, every human being could travel anywhere, associate with anybody, associate with different cultures. So why do we even have to relate it to our identity? Because, for example, I read an argument, a popular argument about this concept that says this idea of Afropolitanism is also about not limiting our identity as Africans to just being Africans. It is a way to express that we are free, we could go anywhere. But the truth is, we can be everything we want to be in Africa. Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't
I
have to go to the world to be Africans, or we do not have to prove to the world that we have the affinity to interact with other cultures, in as much as such
exactly.
interactions are very important. I know that. But this is my concern because people, in the course of doing this, when you look at it closely, you see that people can risk assimilation in the process. That is why you see people trying to kind of reject the African ways because of such interactions. So this is what I think for now.
I so much agree with what Ima said. I, for one, I have a problem with the concept. Like, why do we have to come up with Afropolitanism? And who is Afropolitanism made for? So, just like some critics have talked about, we as Africans, we have a history of movement. So it's not just, when we began to move to, let's say, the global north or from Lagos to London or whatever it is. And then when you look at this
You should have
concept
used
closely, it does
you
not
should have used
describe.
Runtown's voice from Lagos to Kampala. You know,
Yeah, and sorry for that for the interruption,
So,
Hope. But
okay.
you said that as Africans we have a history of movement, which is true. But I just want to chip in that the world has a history of movement.
human beings have a history of
The-
No, but
movement.
the
exactly.
problem with
Human beings
Afropolitanism
have
is
a
that
history, not just
it
Africans.
does not involve Africans that move within Africa. So, for instance, let's say if I, as a Nigerian, I move from Ghana to Togo, from Togo to Mali, I am not Afropolitan. So, what does it? It's therefore means
That's
that
their privileged piece of it.
Exactly.
That
exactly, it's
privileged
therefore
piece
that's
of it.
privilege. So an
Exactly.
African who do not have the capacity to obtain a visa to go to the global north is not Afropolitan. So it's not all inclusive. So who is this concept made for? I feel like it's to romance the pride of certain Africans. I
Yes.
don't know if you get what I mean. Just to
I,
romance
I
their pride, and we've reached a certain stage that other Africans have not gotten to. Because to me,
Okay, there is
in an
something I'm
aspect,
thinking
it's
of, but I will say it
discriminatory
later.
in a way.
Yes.
It's
I think
discriminatory in a way. So I feel like I would gear more towards Pan-Africanism than Afropolitanism. Because then with the way Afropolitanism is being romanticized, we risk betraying our ancestors. We risk betraying those who fought for our freedom. We risk holding on to that black struggle, what really makes us African. So that's really my take on it.
Yeah, I just listening to everybody talk. I'm just thinking about the concept, and just like Prince was saying about reclaiming our identity from the usually deficit focused narrative of African, or this is what they are, especially with the proliferation of social media, you begin to see things. So the Afropolitanism is a way to reclaim that identity. But in terms of thinking about migration and immigration, and how privilege tends to shape people that can travel or not travel. Something that I was thinking about, people that can like move from Lagos to Rome, like you were mentioning, is how this can then be related to brain drain, where because those people have privilege, they are probably wealthy, those people are probably of the high class, maybe like expertise in whatever field they are. I think it leads to brain drain, and we don't have expertise in those originating countries they are originating from. So that's just something I wanted to comment on.
So what I'm even talking about is, yeah, you are right, TC. The concept of brain drain is another problem, and Hope also pointed to cultural erosion. That in the
Yeah,
process we might denounce our ancestors and all of that. But my own personal take on this is that this concept of Afropolitanism, like the basic idea, the basic underpinnings of this concept is that Afropolitanism is a concept that tries to show that Africans are not just limited by their definition as Africans based on their geographical space. So, but the way I think about it critically is, why do we even have to make that effort to define ourselves as being able to go beyond our geographical space? Because the truth is, why exactly do we have to go beyond our geographical space and then try to show the world that we have the ability to do that?
exactly.
Existence does not require that we go beyond our geographical space to redefine our identity as Africans, because anybody can migrate. When there is need for you to migrate, of course you can migrate, you can
I
go to
think
any place in the world, but just your ability to explore the world should not be tied to our identity, that Africa can also. I don't like that idea of can also,
Also,
because
yeah,
why?
I think I can relate to why some people might say African can also, or Africans can also, because if you tend to look at like how immigration policies are shaped, there are countries where, oh, these people coming are the good people, people coming from this side are the bad people, or
But
less.
isn't that a racist? Isn't that anchored on racism? Those
It
racism.
policies,
is.
Yes,
isn't that design? So, like, it means we are trying to tolerate that racism by saying, irrespective of the racism,
of
we are still
we
doing
still
this when we should be talking about dismantling those racist policies.
exactly.
Or
Well,
trying to
that's
prove that in the midst of that racism, we are the good ones that should be
Yes.
welcomed and should not be we don't have to do that, because nobody has to welcome us.
One of
I,
the there are some things that I think about sometimes. Like when I meet someone and I tell them that I'm Nigerian, and they start telling me, "Oh, I met this Nigerian. Nigerian people are so intelligent, blah 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 blah," and I'm always like thinking, Nigerians, we are moving from not being the model minority to becoming the model minority outside of Nigeria. And I don't like that because, in the real sense of it, not every Nigerian is intelligent, if in the book definition of intelligence. It's just that most Nigerians that get the privilege to move abroad are people that have had the opportunity to acquire the best education, has the opportunity to
yes,
have the finances to, so like they are not seeing the full, like, so Nigerians come in different colors and shades, and I hate that we have to be put in one basket
it's a
as a
selection thing.
monolithic identity, right? So, and also
Yeah.
the other thing that I see, which we have talked about in our previous video, is that because we are trying to fit into any environment we find ourselves, and we'll make jokes that if you go to any place in the world and you don't find a Nigerian,
in
it means
Nigerian.
it's not habitable, right? But the problem is that we have forced ourselves so much to adapt to every situation to the point that we lose ourselves. And that's why you find Nigerians outside of Nigeria, they will do everything possible to make sure you cannot even dictate the Nigerian accent when they speak. That is how much they
Exactly.
want to fit into certain environments. And for me, I don't know, that's kind of betraying who you are or your identity, but maybe that's just my opinion.
Yes. And also when I think about this Afropolitanism thing,
Puritanism.
I also kind of think it is even more theoretical. Yeah, because in the real sense of it, when you look at it closely, okay, because how I define it personally is just like that cosmopolitanism. It is just
Hmm.
like saying Africans are citizens of the world.
Of the
This is my,
world.
my shortest definition of that concept.
But
So
everybody should
it
be
is not,
citizen of the world.
yeah,
Everybody.
so exactly.
Exactly.
And even what I'm saying is that even in the real sense of it, when we look at it, okay, yeah, human beings are citizens of the world. Let's just say Africans are citizens of the world. To me, it's not even that realistic to say that as an African, I am a citizen of the world, because any place I find myself in the world, your sense of belonging has a lot of role to play.
To
So there
play.
is much more to just saying, okay, yeah, I am a free man. I choose to belong to wherever I belong. Because you don't even belong to the world by force. For example, if you live in Germany and you say, yeah, I'm very Afropolitan and I even feel like I belong here more than I belong to Nigeria. Of course,
Oh
as
my
a human
God.
being, you have the right to say that. Yes, people say that. And then you have the right to say that. But then the truth, the main thing is, how much does the German society think that you belong to
You
them
belong.
more than you belong to Nigeria, where you are coming from? So at the end of the day, nationality is still very practical.
The
We have,
question even
we have
is like
full
who,
identity as Africans.
yeah, who does
This is who we are.
Afropolitanism really serve? Like, I think that is the question, like, we really have to think about. Like, who does it serve? Because just like
True.
Emma rightfully pointed out, when you're talking about, okay, people who have migrated from, Africa to the global north, then let's look at the experiences of these Africans that have migrated to the global north. How do they live? How are they faring? Does this reflect Afropolitanism? So I don't know what you guys have to say about this.
Well, to begin with, what we've talked about, number one, when we talk about, yeah, Afropolitanism, our ability to move, yeah, you and Prince also pointed out, there are much more Africans who do not have the financial wherewithal or who do not have the educational wherewithal to migrate as easily as some of us. So it means that concept is even excluding those people because they are Africans. And then secondly, you asked a question about, okay, we that migrate, let's just pretend that the Afropolitanism is referring to us that are able to migrate. How do we feel in our destination countries? So the answer to that is varied, right? It's very
Yeah.
individualistic. But research has shown that a lot of migrants in their destination countries usually have problems with integration, especially considering language, especially considering,
Job opportunities.
exactly job opportunities and integration possibilities. So migrants have been documented to struggle a lot in destination countries. And I know that personally, I conducted a study about mental health and integration of migrants, and participants reported having 0 to just 5% sense of belonging, which means integration is not happening, even after some of them have spent 10 years in such destination countries. So in this context, I do not really know how Afropolitanism is playing out.
Yes, I
I
do
think
agree with you. Sorry, TC. I'm just going to say a short thing. The few weeks ago, there was something happened, and it got me thinking, and I was like, should I just pack my shit and go back to Nigeria? Because like I'm tired of this fucking place. The truth is that I do not see myself, even if I have lived here for 20, 30 years, I do not see myself as being a part of this society. Like deep down in me, I still know that I am Nigerian and I belong to that Nigerian environment. And that is where I feel most at home, right? And the truth is that I do not, it's not, this is not just personal to me that I feel Nigerian. Most people around me also do not think that I belong to this place. You would see it in their action. You will see it in subtle language that they use. You will see it in the way they think about you and the way they see you. So, and I'm okay with that. Like, I do not belong here. This land belongs to indigenous peoples, even though there are other people who now claim to own this land, but it belongs to indigenous peoples of North America. But I also consider myself a visitor here. So, and hopefully one day I can go back to Africa and feel where I would be the happiest in my life.
I
Yeah.
think you just reiterated what I was going to mention with Ima's when Ima was talking about studies that have shown difficulties with people integrating into their society, and I think you are a typical. We are typical example, myself included, because I also have this I feel sometimes a lack of sense of belonging, like you don't have that full spectrum of belonging where you are. Not like you've experienced discrimination directly or you've experienced, but you just know that this is not home. And
It's
it's
a feeling.
called
You feel it.
yeah,
You
yeah,
feel it, yeah.
yeah. It's called integration paradox. And I was credits to Lydia, a classmate of mine, in my program. I think she was the one that mentioned that concept first, but I think it was in another angle. But it's the idea that people you think, oh, they are educated, they earn well, they are well to do economically, they are this, they are that. They should integrate well. And if I could use Prince as a typical example, you would think that, oh, once he gets to Canada, he should integrate well. But the
Yeah.
opposite, the opposite is the case. Now, as far as Afropolitanism and who it benefits goes, I think there should be a limit to, oh, okay, this is positive, we are all looking for carrying our identity and all whatnot. But for example, the black girl power identity kind of thing, where black women show a sense of independence, show a sense of being capable and all whatnot. But I feel like we should have a limit to that, because when we begin to show resilience and it becomes a problem. So the
I think
same way if we
you need to clarify what you just mentioned about the black girl power and independence before you get into trouble. Because if I understand you correctly, you are trying to insinuate that that power is important, but it does not
yes.
mean that you should let a black woman suffer until she dies because she's showing resilience and strength.
Oh yeah.
I think
Oh, definitely.
okay,
Thank you so much. Yeah, yeah. I'm not saying black girl power is bad or no,
yeah.
black woman power. No. Like at what point do you seek support? At what point do you seek integration? Do you seek people's and not say, oh, black identity, African identity, Afropolitanism, oh, I can do it, I can all those kind of things. I think we should recognize when limit is limit. Yeah.
Okay, so because we don't have so much time, we could talk about this like all day. But before we end the conversation for today, I would like us to probably give one or two thoughts on should we should there be a boundary to which we use the concept of Afropolitanism, or should we just not use it at all? Should we like desist from associating with Afropolitanism, or is there a thin line or
I
a
I don't
a
think
way we can negotiate that?
I don't think we have the authority to tell people what they should or should not do. I do not think that it's in our place to make this type of recommendation because it will be coming out of probably ignorance on our part or pride on our part. There's a thin line between those two. So, but I think that anybody, because I think part of the reason we are having this conversation is that we need people to know what is the aspects that drove some Africans to think about this
So
concept, right?
Yeah.
Because being able to adapt to diverse environments and being able to do things in diverse ways is a good thing in itself, right? So, but it's also important that whoever is thinking about using principles of Afropolitanism should also know that it also has its critics and they have valid points about how that desire to fit into every environment you find yourself can, lead to loss of identity and loss of who you are. So that's my
Yeah.
opinion about this.
Exactly. So I think that what Prince said is very valid because when you think about our ability as Africans to adapt to various socio-cultural space, it is also kind of promoting diversity, which is very important. The diversity that we advocate for even as social workers. So that is very important. My own personal problem with this is just how we try to relate it to our true identity as Africans. But just as Prince has said once more, we do not have the capacity to tell people how exactly they should act towards or use this concept. And for the records, we are not even scholars of this Afropolitanism. For
Afropolitanism.
instance, people like
But it's
Achille
important to talk
Mbembe,
about.
exactly.
Yeah.
People like this man, like Mbembe, who have
Bembe.
written a lot, who are even the pioneers of this concept, should even be in the position to make some, to shape this kind of decision. But
Maybe
we are
he will
just
see this
lending our
video and
voices.
write to us, telling us that we fucked up.
Now we are talking, now what are we
But
talking about?
yeah, but the thing is, my own personal suggestion, because I don't need to be a scholar of that concept to give an opinion about it. My own
Yeah.
personal suggestion is that, in as much as people should embrace diversity, we should always be conscious never to get to the point of assimilation, because that's my fear. And Afropolitanism has the potentials to make people do that. So, however we mix up, however we become citizens of the world, we must be first class citizens of Africa.
Exactly. I think Ima just sums it up perfectly. Like, just as we've said that while it's important for us to recognize how we as Africans can, dwell beyond geographical borders, we also must recognize that there is a struggle that makes us Africans, and we must not forget that. So, thank you for watching today's video, and we'll see you next time. Bye.